This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I am Pauline.
And I'm Faithless Forrest, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, we will be interviewing Sarah Morehead of Recovering from Religion.
But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has fun meetups at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting around 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday, we hold a book club discussion. And the fourth Sunday, there is usually a get-together we call a reflections meeting. It features a potluck lunch in someone's home.
Later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations. But I guess in the news, it's March 4th, Happy Army Day.
Bad joke.
All right, well, we have some free thought birthdays for you here in March. Please meet Carolyn Porco. Hopefully I haven't mangled her name. She was born March 6th, 1953. Wikipedia says she is an American planetary scientist known for her work in the exploration of the outer solar system, beginning with her imaging work on the Voyager missions to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, that's how it's pronounced, folks, Uranus, Neptune in the 1980s.
Dr. Porco leads the imaging science team on the Cassini mission currently in orbit around Saturn. She is also an imaging scientist on the New Horizons mission launched to Pluto on January 19, 2006. She is an expert on planetary rings and the Saturnian moon, which I think is pronounced Enceladus.
All right. Viewers, call us in if you know of an alternate pronunciation on that. Behind us is an image of Saturn, and it's taken by Cassini, and it also features Earth. Pauline, do you see the Earth?
No, it's not on the monitor, and it's not on the show notes. Where is it?
Well, if we zoom in, we can see it. There is Carolyn, you, and me, and the other 7 billion humans.
But taking pictures is not all she does. She lectures to the public and has won the Carl Sagan Medal for Excellence in communicating science to the public.
Carolyn is also an outspoken freethinker. She attended and was a speaker at the Beyond Belief Symposium, November of 2006, where, as it is reported in the New York Times,
Carolyn Porco, a senior research scientist at the Space Science Institute in Boulder, Colorado, called, half in jest, for the establishment of an alternative church with Dr. Tyson, whose powerful celebration of scientific discovery had the force and cadence of a good sermon as its first minister. She was not kidding entirely. She said, we should let the success of the religious formula guide us. Let's teach our children from a very young age about the story of the universe and its incredible richness and beauty. It is already so much more glorious and awesome and even comforting than anything offered by any scripture or God concept we know.
All right. Well, also in March, we have the birth anniversary of Brian Edward Cox. Can we get his photo up there? Born March 3rd of 1968. He's an English physicist and science promoter.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation's Free Thought of the Day reports Cox is best known for his science outreach to the general public. He has appeared as a presenter for numerous BBC television and radio programs on scientific subjects, including wonders of the solar system and wonders of the universe. Since 2009, Cox has co-hosted the BBC Radio 4 program, The Infinite Monkey Cage, with comedian Robin Inc. Is that pronounced correctly?
Your guess is better than mine.
Okay. The show features a rotating panel of scientists and entertainers discussing topics, as well as an occasional stand-up mathematician. Cox and Inc. are strong advocates for a rational point of view. Some episodes have directly tackled the topic of science versus the supernatural.
Cox also lectures widely, and he has given several TED Talks. He has co-authored several books about physics, including the 2009 Why Does E Equal MC Squared and Why Should We Care? Cox is a strong advocate for science education and government funding of scientific research, and seeks to actively combat scientific ignorance and anti-scientific attitudes. Cox told the British newspaper Guardian, March 7, 2010, that he never believed in God, saying, "I was sent to Sunday school for a few weeks, but I didn't like getting up on Sunday mornings." He lives in Manchester with his wife, whose last name is unpronounceable, Gia Milanovic, and their children. So,
Your quiz. How is Brian Cox like the fictional lead character in movie The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai? I've never seen it. Across the eighth dimension.
And if he were here now, would he be flattered by our comparison? So viewers, if you know that what we might be getting at, give us a call. All right. Well, viewers, this is a call-in show, and we encourage you to call and ask us or our guests questions about today's topic.
If the technology is with us, we will speak with Sarah Morehead, the Executive Director of Recovering from Religion. Sarah, are you there?
I am. Thanks for having me.
All right.
We're glad to have you.
That's great. Well, so recovering from religion, tell us what that's all about. How do you obviously when you meet people and say that, there's got to be a standard conversation you have. What's that all about?
There is, and it depends on who I'm talking to. When I talk to people in the secular community and they hear recovering from religion, I get one of two reactions. It's either, oh my gosh, I wish that had been around when I was going through it, or they ask, why on earth do we need recovering from religion? And I'll get to that here in a second. The fun one, though, is when I talk to people who are religious, and they say, recovering from religion, what's there to recover from? And usually they go very quickly into telling me how their religion is not a religion, it's a relationship, and therefore they're exempt from needing any sort of recovery. So that's kind of a fun one, too. But what recovering from religion is, we are a practical and hands-on support network for people who are struggling with any facet of negative impact that religion has had in their life. So whether they are long-term religious people who are in the process of deconverting or looking for a safe place that they can ask questions and explore their doubts without being told to pray about it or that it's sinful to doubt, that sort of thing, all the way to people who might have even been, lifelong atheists, but maybe they have a religious coworker that they don't quite know how to deal with, or their in-laws are pressuring them to let their kids go to church, things like that. And we help people with all kinds of support in that, area.
All right. I was listening to that and I couldn't help but write down sinful to doubt. Being a lifelong non-believer, that would never have occurred to me. What percentage might be like that?
The vast majority of people who come to recovering from religion have an understanding from being formerly religious of that teaching, which is that doubt is something that was created by evil or Satan or something like that, and to question at all the divine teachings that you've been indoctrinated with is an indicator that you've opened yourself up to the dark side, for lack of a better term, I try not to use explicitly Christian language, but the majority of people we work with just by default tend to be Christian or formerly Christian just because of the population of the United States. But we get people from all walks of life. People who are leaving Islam, people who are leaving, Hinduism, and that sort of thing. But predominantly, it's Christianity. And one of the resounding themes in more inerrant word or fundamentalist Christianity of many different forms is just that you are to accept what you are taught, and to do otherwise, to question it, to embrace those doubts, is seen as a sign of weakness to Satan, and that's something that people really get demonized for, in an effort to indoctrinate people towards this one blind belief. You
Sarah?
don't want people thinking for themselves a whole lot. That tends to be counterproductive when you want them to write you a check every Sunday.
Sarah, I wanted you to just speak maybe for a minute or two about what your background is, that you had this interest to found this program.
Sure. My own background, I grew up very evangelical Southern Baptist. My entire extended family is from the mountains of Georgia and is a long line of ministers and very devout Southern Baptist communities. And, it's one of those things, as you guys are all very familiar about, in the South, religion is not just something you do on Sunday. It's a part of your culture. It's a part of your community. It's where your friends are. It's where your connections are, and all those things. So, when I grew up and I became a young adult, I immediately married into the Southern Baptist Church. My husband at the time was a promise keeper. Those kinds of things. We were very evangelical, and we practiced our faith fervently, really, just day to day, every waking moment kind of thing. We taught Sunday school. I taught Awanas, all that stuff. And so I was virtually indistinguishable from the typical run-of-the-mill, mainstream Southern Baptist. And, it was one of those things, and I talk about this, long story short, my husband became more and more violent. And in that process, the church really played a big part of that, because our community, they teach such very strict roles, gender roles, and, keeping women in line and that sort of thing. And they kind of turn a blind eye to this whole concept of when it escalates into physical violence and emotional abuse and those kinds of things. And at one point, my husband at the time, he'd been very abusive to me for many years, but he went after one of our kids, and that for me was the breaking point. Right. And I went to our church, to our ministers. I certainly wouldn't call the police, excuse me, or anything like that. I went to our ministers, and I went to the benevolence committee. And the benevolence committee, for those who aren't familiar, is a group of men who decide how to use their funds that help out people in need. And asked them for financial support, because I had made my husband leave and had to detail why that was, which was very embarrassing and all those things. The response of the church was to tell me no. First they had to pray about it, but they decided Jesus didn't want them to give me $600 to pay my bills or feed my kids. And that was a problem somehow. But they did want me to come back and meet with the ministers in charge of the marriage and family counseling and all that stuff, and for me to attend biblical counseling to learn how to get my marriage back together. And in all of that, I was leaving the building, and I accidentally kind of bumped the door into someone who was putting etching on the doors. And I had this bizarre moment where I realized that Jesus was not okay with me having $600 to take care of my kids, but he was totally cool with glass etching on the doors, which had to have cost much, much more than $600. That was not the moment I became a non-believer, but that was certainly one of the first steps where it stopped making sense. I think after that was many years of struggling through, and very much by myself. I didn't know anyone else. This process of letting go of my religious beliefs, and it was very isolating. And I came to realization once I became a non-believer that there were other people going through this, And it's really become just my passion to help other people.
That's
know that they're not
wonderful.
alone.
I'm sure there's other
Powerful.
people who, in our audience, who are going through some of that right now. And I notice you have a variety of resources. You have the Secular Therapy Project, the recommended reading and book lists. You have online support via Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. Reddit, okay. You have local support groups, and you're working on the Hotline Project and Living After Faith podcast. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Sarah, if someone were to call or your hotline or go online to Recovering from Religion and see your resources, and they wanted to talk to someone, what kind of person would the caller find? What would the volunteer try to tell them what they should think or believe, or what? Could you respond to that, please?
Absolutely. That's actually a very common question that I get. Are we trying to convert people to atheism?
Mm-hmm.
What are we trying to promote? And really what we're trying to do is just give them a safe place to explore those. So if you notice on our recommended reading list, we have, I think, 8 different categories of things you can look through and books you can read. And not one of them is a book that says this is how you think. It just gives you more information. And that's what we do when people connect with us. We have trained volunteers who we call them facilitators, and their job is to help people just in this process as they're walking away, and help them find resources. One of the things when I was growing up in the church, and I've heard this from many other people, I didn't even really know what the word atheist meant. And the word, secular meant Satan, and humanist meant hell. And the church works very hard to load language terms like this in a way that's incredibly negative and scary for people who are considering walking away. And you have to get to a point where leaving is less risky than staying, as risky as it is to leave. And because of that, they don't know where to look. And so coming to us, what we can do is we can help them find resources in their community. If they're closeted and they have specific areas that we can help them with, we connect them to private groups on Facebook where they connect with other people all over the world who are running through these same challenges in their own heads and how to deal with it. It's very risky to take this step when your entire world is
Sarah?
religious belief.
Sarah, I'd like
walking away from it means you have to redo everything with your identity and who you are.
Sure.
And it's very challenging.
Sarah, let me ask you, if you could, for the benefit of our viewers, because we have to assume that someone may be tuning into our show for the first time ever, how do you define atheism? And we also probably want to talk about agnosticism and theism. So have a stab at it, and probably Pauline and I will talk about it, our usage of the word as well.
Sure. On our website, we have something we call the spectrum of disbelief. And it starts with polytheism, and it goes all the way to atheism. And basically, the perspective of recovering from religion is that religion is at best an unnecessary force in our society, and at worst incredibly damaging. So we encourage people to move along the spectrum of disbelief to a point where they're no longer dependent on a specific set of dogma. So deism, agnosticism, atheism, any of those things that really just free people from that confines of you have to write us a check, you have to avoid hell, all these things that guilt people into behaviors. As far as the definition, atheism in our book is very, very simple. It's just a lack of belief in the supernatural. That's it. Agnosticism is an uncertainty of belief or a disinterest in coming to a complete conclusion. And in our book, all of those things are okay. Theism, kind of a little more supernatural leaning, but there may be something out there, or there is something out there, but it doesn't have a direct impact in our life.
All right. Pauline, did you have anything to maybe add or...
Well, so everybody, to some extent, is an atheist or agnostic in the fact that they don't believe in all of the gods. Especially if they're Christian, they believe in Jesus and God, the Christian God, but they don't necessarily believe in the Jewish God or the Muslim God, or they question whether their gods are as powerful as their own God, and vice versa then.
All right.
Right, and on our spectrum of disbelief, when I talk to people who are religious many, many times, and here in the United States, they will say, well, I only believe in one God. And I tend to give them that. We let the Trinity go because it's not worth it right at that moment. But they believe in only one God. And on our spectrum of disbelief, that means they're already on step 2. They have already disavowed a belief in all of the other gods, which would be step 1. That would be polytheism, to believe that there are thousands of gods that exist and are powerful and all those things. So when they say, well, I only believe in one God, I like to show them the spectrum of disbelief and say, see, so you're already on step 2. Our job, my job, is just to encourage you to keep going.
Well, I wondered also, too, Sarah, when someone calls in and say they haven't told anybody, they're just having questions in their own mind, do you ask them to give their real name? Do you expose in any way who that person is? Or is all of this secret and it's totally up to them when they...
No, we are completely confidential. In fact,
Great.
We have some of our facilitators and some volunteers for the Hotline Project that are active clergy members in the Clergy Project, which is not our program, but it's kind of a sister program to us, in that it's similar to Recovering from Religion in that they support clergy members who are practicing clergy as they're coming out of the closet or leaving their beliefs behind. But we are very, very confidential on all aspects of this.
Wonderful.
We don't ever out people. That's up to them to decide how to do in a way that works best for them and their specific situation. And it may not be ever. There's one gentleman I can think of just off the top of my head who he's an old order Mennonite, and he lives off the grid in a Mennonite community, horse and buggy, the whole 9 yards. And when he goes into town once a month, he sends us an email and checks in with us and lets us know how he's doing. But he can't ever leave. He'd have to leave his wife and his 8 kids behind. And he's not going to. That's just too much risk.
Right, yeah.
But he checks in with us, and he checks out our resources, and we're a source of support to him.
Well, that borders on one of the topics I made a note to make sure we covered, and that is that there's obviously got to be a lot of people who are having religious doubts, or they're no longer doubting. They're pretty certain that all of this stuff is myth, but yet they've got believing spouses and children. So I assume, is that a mostly common thing? Do you know anything about the statistics there?
I don't. And once things settle down with all the current projects that we're launching this year, one of the things we do want to do is start collecting more accurate statistical demographics of this sort of thing. I would say, it's easily half, though, just off the top of my head and the interactions I have with people and our facilitators, that people come to their own doubts and they start working through it. And then they realize their partner is not in the same place as them. And that's incredibly challenging. Their relationship was usually based originally with one major commonality, and that's religion. Mm-hmm. So what happens when that changes? Does the dynamic of the marriage change? How does it change? All of that. There's a fantastic book coming out by Gail McGowan that is going to address that specifically. And Recovering from Religion has a private Facebook page specifically for mixed marriages like this, for non-believers or believers who are in the process of removing themselves from religion, but they have a spouse who's religious. And if anybody needs access to that, they can email us, and we will work on getting them to that.
Do you have many who maybe are calling in and are exploring their beliefs because they have a non-believing spouse, and now they've been exposed to the ideas, and they're maybe looking to confirm their doubts?
We do. I wouldn't say that's a higher percentage. I think in that situation, most frequently what we see is we'll get someone who gets a hold of us and says, I found out that my spouse is in one of your support groups, and I want to know what crazy stuff you're telling them. And then we start having conversations, and they start going, oh, well, you're not telling them really crazy stuff, and then they start kind of thinking it through as well. So it tends to be more that they get angry with us first.
That's interesting and maybe a little scary. All right.
Well, it must be very frightening, very difficult for people to even contemplate, to question, to make the first question, for fear that that they will be expected to. The effects that it'll have on their family, their friends, their social group, even their work. Some people may fear that they would lose their job. How do you address that?
Well, one of the things we really encourage people to do is take steps in times and with the intention of it working best for them. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all, now you do this, and now you tell this person, and now, it's not a 12-step program, and we encourage everyone to do this at their own pace. In our opinion, there are major pockets of this country where coming out as a non-believer is not safe to your home and family, it's not safe to your job, those kinds of things. And we know that there are areas that that's not the case, and that's fantastic. But many, many areas it is. And the proof there is just that we exist and we're flourishing all over the place. So in those situations, if people have sent out feelers to their spouse or to their kids or to their family, and they feel like, gosh, when I bring up this topic of maybe questioning my belief, and I get pushed back and people go, oh, well, good thing that's not you because I'd disown you, things like that. It's okay to just back off a little bit and go, okay, I'm going to just go with the flow here a little until I'm strong enough or until I've made enough connections in the secular community to start letting go of these other connections I have, because it may actually mean they're going to sever that relationship entirely. And people have to be ready for that, that it can and does happen.
All right. Well, the door is just peeking open here, and Sarah, it means we have our first caller. We're going to push a button here and greet that caller and let everyone interact. Here we go. Hello, caller. You should be on the air. Can we give a name or a nickname for you so that we know how to address you? Hello, Chuck.
Simple question for Sarah, and it is your hotline up and running? And so what is the phone number that one would use to reach it?
Sarah, did you get that?
I did not, actually. I can't hear the audio too well on that.
Okay. So its caller is Chuck, and he asks, is the hotline up and running? And, of course, what is that hotline number?
That's a great question. The hotline is coming together as we speak. It is not up and running yet, but we expect it to be up in April. It took a very long time for us to research all of the providers for the different parts of the hotline that all come together. So basically what the hotline is going to be is an 800 number toll-free that people will be able to call and talk to someone and have these conversations with them. They're struggling with doubt. They're trying to figure out what to do, or they don't believe anymore and they're afraid to tell people. Or maybe they just are believers and they just have questions about what this all means and, the secular community in general. And our goal is to be able to provide them with those hands-on resources and just someone friendly to listen. We get a lot of calls in the middle of the night, people calling and just saying, I can't sleep, I don't know what to do anymore, and I don't know where to turn. And that really became the impetus behind us saying, we need to offer this resource. And that's what we're going to do. So when we have it up and running here in the next few weeks, ideally, there will be a lot of noise about it, and we will be getting the number out to everyone. But it's not quite functional yet. We're just on the brink of it.
So it's 24/7.
That's the goal.
Wonderful.
We have to be able to have the volunteers command that. And then we're in the process of interviewing and training volunteers right now and working on their availability and that sort of thing. But the goal, yes, is a 24/7 hotline. That is the goal.
Sarah, speaking along those same terms, I noticed that there is one, there appears to be one, is it recovering from religion, or is it some contact affiliated with y'all right here in Knoxville on the east side of town? Is that correct?
I believe there was an active group and our facilitator moved on.
Okay.
So we're looking for a facilitator for that group.
Well,
so if someone in Knoxville interested, they can go to our website and fill out the volunteer form.
All right, and great. We should ask.
Hotline volunteers that have come in, we're inundated with volunteer requests right now. So we're slightly backlogged on our local groups, just because the hotlines had to take a little precedence.
All right.
So we've got a few groups across the country that are in transition and in need of new leadership. Because, I mean, that just happens. People move on.
Sure.
And, you know,
And may I ask one more question?
Sure. Sarah, Chuck has another question. Go ahead, Chuck.
Sure.
Sorry.
What are the problems that people have that you most frequently encounter?
Did you get that, Sarah? Do I need to repeat it?
If you could repeat it, that would be great.
Chuck asks, what are the problems that you most frequently encounter from callers?
Oh, I think most frequently, you know, emotionally, they're dealing with an identity crisis. And a lot of times we hear a lot of depression. We hear a lot of anxiety. Specific problems are usually related to how do I live this double life? How do I start walking away from this double life? You know, we encourage people to take tiny steps if that's going to work best for them. So something like as simple as just saying, you know, I'm not going to teach Sunday school this quarter. I'm just going to be a participant in the service. Those tiny little steps back where people can feel like they're starting to reclaim, you know, their own integrity with not perpetuating a myth they no longer believe in. And then eventually getting to a point where they realize they have the right to say, you know, I don't want to go to service anymore. I'm not going to be doing that. Or, you know, I'm not going to go to the prayer group meeting anymore. Things like that. It tends to be between those two. You know, people are really looking for, okay, I don't believe this anymore. Now what? And what we try to do is help them answer that question in a way that works for them. So it's very unique. You know, people will come to us with many, many different challenges. And our job is to just say, okay, let's help you figure this out. And they tend to solve it on their own. They just need someone to help them walk through it.
All right. Did that answer Chuck's question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'll say goodbye.
Chuck, could you tell us, have you watched before?
Oh, yes. I'm a member of RED.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we'll clear the line, and we hope we get a few more callers. All right. Well, as you can tell, this is a call-in show, and we're a little bit more beyond the halfway point. This might be a good time to do the mid-program break, and it looks like, Pauline, you're already ahead of me.
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program for the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalist of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live and most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Community Access Television Channel 3, 6, or Channel 12, depending on your cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at CTV Knox, that's KNOX.org.
This is a call-in show, and we're live today, March 4th, 2014. Viewers can call in now to the number on the screen with a short comment or question for us or our guest. And I guess right now we're going to go to an informative video break. Take it away.
In or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Back.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community camaraderie and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area.
Our Tuesday meeting going on now at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria is in the Knoxville Old City. The Rationalist of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions on subjects topical and timeless. Once a month, we get together for a book club. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. The March book is The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion, by Jonathan, whose last name...
Haidt.
All right.
I believe it is. H-A-I-D-T.
It's always a challenge for me to encounter words like that. Visit rationalists.org to find the rest of the calendar for book club and join us at Barnes & Noble Booksellers, 8029 Kingston Pike, 4 p.m. every second Sunday of the month.
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find that if you don't believe in God,
You're
you
not
are not
alone. All right. Well, we have with us here today Sarah Morehead, who is is your title director?
Executive Director.
I'm the executive director.
Executive director. That means you have subordinate directors?
One would presume, yes.
All right. And we're hoping we'll get viewers to call in. And the name of your organization, Sarah, for those who've turned in mid-program is?
Sure, it's Recovering from Religion.
All right. I think that's a little bit self-explanatory, but we're going to delve into it further. So we talked about the issues for, people who are having doubt. They call in. The issues about people who may have spouses who are believing. So what about for people who are raising kids? Do you have resources that help there?
We do. On our recommended reading page, if people go down, I think 3 or 4 bookshelves down, we talk about, we have a list for people raising kids without religion from a parenting perspective. And then underneath, we even have books for kids that do a great job of explaining evolution and science and morality and all those things for them without religious influence.
Could you mention a few titles? Oh, I stepped on Pauline. Let Pauline...
No, that's okay.
All right. I'm especially interested...
Belief and Raising Freethinkers by Dale McGowan are the 2 we recommend the absolute most. If anyone is raising kids, you want to read those 2 books.
Would you please repeat? Would you please repeat that? I think we talked over you.
Oh, that's okay. It's Parenting Beyond Belief and Raising Freethinkers by Dale McGowan.
Okay. And then we need to also ask about titles for kids, but we have a call. So when we're done with the caller, let's try to remember we're going to talk about titles for kids. Pauline, I'll let you talk to the caller first.
Hello. May we have a nickname or a name by which to address you?
Yes, this is Charles from Central Illinois.
Hello. Did you say Charles?
Yes.
All right, great.
From Central Illinois. That's great. What's your question?
Excuse me? Oh, in regards to recovering from religion, there seems to be a large amount of time and effort spent by people to isolate their internal groupings away from the general society. And this can cause a lot of disconnect and surprise when they start to remove away from religion and into the religious group and stop being so isolated. What is the simplest way to keep from major cultural shock from happening?
Sarah, did you get the question from Charles?
Parts of it, if you could summarize for me, that would
apparently our miking is not real good today. Help me, Pauline, if I got it right. Charles was asking, for people who've been in religion, they've been, maybe a little bit isolated and cloistered, and do you have ways to kind of help them connect?
I think maybe if I got it right, Charles, correct me if I'm incorrect. I think he's saying once you move away from religion, you can feel isolated, and you can feel lonely, and do you have ways of, I think he's probably referring right in the real here and now within your own city. Is that what you were saying, Charles?
Yes, because you're suddenly cut off from everything you've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
The support groups, the social meetings, the inside jokes and everything.
Yes.
You're suddenly outside where those things are not heard of. So there's a large amount of social shock and cultural isolation there. So.
Yes, that's what he was saying, Sarah. The shock and the social isolation. And
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think, thank you, Charles. That's a great question. I think the most important thing that secular communities can do to the newly deconverted or the people just leaving their religious communities is really just ask the question, how can we help? The churches do a fantastic job of creating a very insulated community. And walking away from that community is incredibly isolating. People are looking for everything from new golf buddies to new bowling buddies, all the way to, help with finding a babysitter or, what to do when they've got a sick family member and they need help with meals and things like that. So I realize, as someone who's active in the secular communities, that those wonderful resources are there and these great communities exist. But most people who are leaving the religious communities don't know that. So just to simply say, we're here, how can we help you? What can we do to help meet your needs? I think that's a wonderful way to reach out and let them know.
I think
what's available.
I would like to speak to that in the sense that I moved into this area, which is very heavily Christian, and before I moved, I looked to see what kind of resources would be here for me because I wasn't heavily Christian. I did find a Unitarian church, which was a step away from the Christian belief. And then when I got here, it was a big struggle. I hated living here. And over a period of years, I went through exactly what you're talking about, Charles. And I started looking on the internet for meetup groups. And I found the Rationalist of East Tennessee. I had no idea what that was. But I thought, well, at least it must be more reasonable thinking. And I began to try to find people. And I think the internet is a wonderful resource. They have the Freethought Forum. They have books. There's the Digital Freethought. There's the Atheists. I'm sure Lee knows more of the groups than I do. But just being able to read and to have your thoughts and feelings confirmed is a tremendous asset. And perhaps even starting up a nonfiction book yourself where you start in one of your bookstores or in the library where you can put in some of these books that address some of these things that you're interested in and see if some other people, when they put out their brochures, won't come or will come and so that you can begin to start a nucleus if you happen not to have, a Humanist Society is another group that does that too, doesn't it?
Let's ask Charles. Charles, where you are, what kind of support do you have?
Well, we have several secular groups up in Champaign-Urbana.
Wonderful.
And also, like you said, the internet. And I cannot thank you enough for stating about libraries. Libraries have lots of resources, including now, basically all of them have computers, so you can hunt things down on computers. And also, there's the free newspapers that you can get, and
such as
things of that nature. News flyers like things that can be put out by secular humanist groups. The main point is that, what was one of the what's that group that's always protesting funerals and so forth?
Protesting what?
One of the members of the family of the
Oh,
the group.
Charles is asking about the Westboro Baptist Church, where they go and protest at soldiers' funerals and say thank God for dead soldiers.
Yeah, several of the members have been cut off and shunned and kicked out. So when they've been cloistered that long in that kind of environment, walking around completely dazzled and looking at things that they never even knew existed. So giving people support and explanations about what's going on would also be a very good thing to help these people with.
Yeah.
Given how tightly controlled their environment was.
I visited the Reason Rally up in Washington, D.C. back, I guess that was in March of 2012. And one of the speakers there at the rally was a former member of the Westboro Baptist Church. And he spoke.
One of our board members.
And I was about to say, I know he's involved with some free thought groups. So, Sarah, speak a little bit. Tell us his name and maybe what his part is so Charles will know.
Absolutely. It's Nate Phelps is who you're thinking of, and he's the son of Fred Phelps, who is the leader of the Westboro Baptist Church. And Nate is a dear friend and a board member of Recovering from Religion. And in fact, I couldn't hear a lot of what Charles was saying, but many of the members of Westboro are leaving Westboro. And Nate and I talk about them pretty regularly. And it looks like the church itself is coming close to disintegrating. They're working on it. But, there's no question that leaving that sort of mentality, you talk about isolating and culture shock, that's where you're going to see it. But the interesting thing is that we found the message being preached, while it's not usually, on placards on street corners and at funerals, is really not that different inside Westboro than it is in many mainstream inerrant word churches. It's the same message. It might be worded a little differently because the mainstream mega churches aren't looking to make headlines, and they're not out there with their big signs and that sort of thing. It's a little more friendly to fit suburbia, but it's not all that different. So that culture shock can be very similar when you're looking across the entire religious spectrum.
Well, Charles, I hope you got that, and we've got about 10 minutes left. I think what we'd like to do is say thank you for calling and clear the line in hopes that we could get another caller.
No problem.
But thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye then.
I noticed one of the things you say on your site is that you welcome the people to call and to show them the respect that they deserve and the support that you can give them, and to feel comfortable and openly ask previously unspeakable questions and navigate together the delicate disentanglement from the religious influence. And I think that's very nice way of saying, because I think many people, even their minds made out, but it's been very hard for them to speak of those things.
Definitely. There's no question that when you're raised in a community that says our way is the right way, any other way is wrong, then even just giving yourself permission to ask those questions, that in and of itself is a step of independence unheard of in your world, and it's frightening and it's terrifying, but it's also liberating and really exciting. And what we try to do is engage them with that conversation, that they start with us. I like to very gently remind people who call us atheist evangelists, we are not the ones knocking on doors, so, we don't do that. But our job is to give people that safe place to have that conversation. And that's what we do. And the more people hear about us, the more people realize what we're doing, the more we grow every single time. And this is a resource that people have been waiting for, and as they're going through this transitional phase of leaving their religious communities, we're able to offer them, this entrance into this warm and welcoming secular community that exists all over the country. And people are incredibly grateful and appreciative. I love what I'm doing, and I love talking to all these great people as they're, in this process.
I wanted to say, too, even though it's a scary process and fearful and so forth, what I found is once I accepted who I really was and what I really believed, there was a tremendous peace that came over me because I wasn't always trying to figure out which of the rules and the dogmas and the things I should and shouldn't do and was fearful about, and why was I always doing the right thing. So I wonder if you run into that, I'm sure.
It. You know, religion teaches you that from the minute you were born, you were broken and you were in need of a savior, and all of these things were wrong with you, and you have a hole in your heart that only Jesus can fill, and all these things that are reminding you constantly of how wrong you are at every waking moment. You know, and all we do is encourage people to consider the possibility that they're really okay just the way they are. And when they realize that, and they come to this, you know, this conclusion that they don't need religion to dictate their day-to-day life, and that they're the same awesome person they've always been. They don't need this voice constantly telling them they're unworthy. You know, it's an incredible feeling, and to be allowed to be a part of that process with someone it's quite a privilege.
So, Sarah, I want to drag us back to that question I was trying to put on hold, and that is to ask about children's books. And then it sounds like you went through a situation where you made a transition, and then you'd have the question of how, you know, what are you going to be teaching your children about? So let's talk about children's books. What can you recommend? What comes to mind?
Oh, absolutely. So just another plug, go to the recommended resources and the reading list and go all the way down. There's a whole list of them. But off the top of my head, there's two sets of books I would really recommend. One is a set by Dan Barker, who's with the Freedom from Religion Foundation, FFRF. They're fantastic. But it's What If I'm Right, or I'm gonna butcher the title, so Dan, if you're listening, I'm terribly sorry. It's Maybe Right, Maybe Wrong is one of them, and Maybe Yes, Maybe No. And they work, they address morality with kids, and it's really cool. And then the other set that I'm just a huge fan of is it's a 3-book set, and it's called Mammals That Morph, which is all about evolution, and the other one's about a Big Bang, and they're all on the page. So off the top of my head, I'm really learning them, but they're fantastic, and they're great to explain evolution and where the universe came from and all that good stuff. Born with a Bang, that's the name of it. I knew I'd remember.
I'm afraid I talked over you. I was about to say, was that Mammals That Morph?
The first one is Born with a Bang. The second one is the one I'm not remembering, and then the third one is Mammals That Morph. Yes. But it's a 3-part series, and they're on Amazon. So are Dan's books. You can go through our website and find them. They're fantastic.
Man, now I want to interview a child who's read them and get their opinion on that. That would be so cool.
And I'll tell you what, we enjoy those books. They were a help to me when I was still trying to understand what this crazy evolution stuff was. They helped me understand it. So for me to be able to read them with my kids, that was pretty awesome.
I want to ask you quickly, Sarah. We're almost out of time, but I think one of the questions I get is people are afraid that they won't be moral or they won't have a set of morals if they become an atheist. Could you address that?
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I like to try to gently remind people is, you know, if you're at a point in your life that you say, you know, there really isn't a God, and I'm okay with that, that means there also wasn't a God when you believed all of those things, and you still made the moral choices. You know, and it's okay. People can and do look to the Bible for moral choices and pick the things that work for them, and that's fine if that's what they need to do. But you know, there comes a point when, as we're leaving the confines of religious belief and the confines of faith, we realize that there's actually almost a higher standard of this accountability to each other as humans and that sort of thing. And that's, in my mind, even a more freeing morality. Not in that, you know, we go around and everybody does crazy, horrible things to each other, but just the opposite. I find the secular community bends over backwards to be ethical and moral and kind and all of those things without an arbitrary book to tell them what to do. And it's amazing how that works.
All right. Well, we could get a short call in if someone wants to dial immediately. We've got about 3 minutes left in the program where we could talk. And Sarah, so you said that I think you're trying to establish organizations throughout the nation, but where are you guys located? Where's the headquarters?
The headquarters of Recovering from Religion is in Kansas City, Kansas.
Wow. That's a surprise.
Now, am I remembering? Is it? Oh, it's in Oklahoma where there was this effort to get a statue put up by the group that calls themselves the Church of Satan, or is that in Kansas?
I think that's Oklahoma.
Okay.
I think that was Oklahoma.
Okay. Now.
Yeah, I heard about that. I think that's going to be interesting. It's amazing how angry they get when the rules start applying the group they don't like.
Yeah. So I also know that one of my favorite deities was invented because of actions in Kansas. I'm wearing a shirt here that has his holy noodliness, the flying spaghetti monster. And I guess I'm wondering, has the Kansas School Board given up on creationism and intelligent design?
I think that's one of those things that just depends on who's in the board at the moment, It just kind of comes and goes. And I do want to, on a slight deviation, there's a conference that Recovering from Religion helps to put on every year called Aposticon. And they actually have the flying spaghetti monster as their logo and actually shows up in the noodle. They have a costumed three-dimensional flying spaghetti monster that comes. So if you're wearing that shirt right now, that would fit with that perfectly. But anyway.
All right. Well, I love that phrase, aposticon.
It is. It's a portmanteau of the word apostate and conference. And the reason that we all settled with apostate was because we felt like that was just a great word that encompassed all the words. It's not just an atheist conference. It's not just a humanist conference. It's a really exciting event. We bring in tons of speakers that are just really awesome. And all that. It's actually held the weekend of Talk Like a Pirate weekend.
Oh, that would be September 19, I think, is...
Format.
September 19th is International Talk Like a Pirate Day, am I remembering? Or is it the 17th?
That is correct. And that is the weekend of Aposticon every single year.
Oh.
And we have pirate costumes and we have spaghetti costumes. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, be still my heart. I got to go to Kansas.
Aposticon is actually held in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, all right.
And you can check it out on the web at aposticon.org. I believe it's .org. And if I'm wrong, they're going to get me later.
All right. Well, Sarah, sum up in 45 seconds what you've got to say, and then we're going to close out the show.
Sure. If you know someone or if you are someone who is looking for support or resources as you're going through this process of leaving religion, or if you're negatively influenced by religion and you need some help, that's what Recovering from Religion is here for. If you're looking on how to grow your secular community, we can help by putting a Recovering from Religion group in your area, and that helps people transition away from faith and into the welcoming arms of the secular community.
Well, that's great. Well, viewers, it's time to start wrapping things up. Please get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Pauline. Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email freethought